Georgia, they're having another one too close to call. The margins are razor thin in the Georgia election. So why is the media already calling one race for the Democrats? And how are the Republicans responding? Eric Phillips has more from Atlanta.
Good morning. I'm here at the Georgia State Capitol, where the Secretary of State will ultimately have to certify this election as he does any election. That is still to come. But right now, some media outlets are projecting that Reverend Raphael Warnock has won against incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler. And right now, the numbers are seeming to sway in favor of Jon Ossoff as well.
I am going to the Senate to work for all of Georgia. No matter who you cast your vote for in this election, in this moment in American history.
But Loeffler's not conceding the race.
We got lots of things to go out, but we got some work to do here. This is a game of inches. We're going to win this election.
In the other race, Democrat challenger Jon Ossoff has the lead. But with votes still to be counted, it's still too close to call. It's why turnout was key. On runoff election day, we saw lines from early in the morning and into the evening. Voters didn't seem to mind because they realized the importance of this historic day. Even voters like 18-year-old Isaias Salazar, who's participating in his first elections.
It feels great knowing that I have a voice.
Every election is significant. I mean, I think you need to stay informed no matter what, but this one especially.
Tiffany Rivera says important issues like immigration drove her to the polls.
Just the kids that are suffering and separated from their parents and stuff like this. Being pregnant also, I think about my kids. Being a Latino, I feel like the Latino community needs to get out and vote.
A record-setting 3 million plus voters cast their votes early. Then some precincts saw more turnout Tuesday than for the general election in November. Voters say they understand why.
The country's on the line, our safety's on the line, just having a government that can actually govern is on the line, so.
If you care about your way of life, you're definitely going to do that today.
Yeah, I'm ready to move forward on so many levels.
One-on-one government.
Be known as early as this afternoon, but Georgia law does allow for candidates to request a recount if the margin is within 0.05%. If everything goes the way that it's looking, though, this will be an historic election. Reverend Warnock being the first African-American senator elected for Georgia ever, and Jon Ossoff being the youngest senator elected in some 40 years, Pat.
Eric, when you were talking to people, what seemed to be driving the train? What was causing them to vote? Was it? We have some Hispanics talking about immigration. What was the issue that, in their mind, do you think that was causing their vote?
I think that the major issue, Pat, and let me just preface that by saying there are several of them, immigration being one, the coronavirus being another, law enforcement changes being another. But I think the overall issue, if I were to put it in one broad category, would be change. People are looking for change. Voters I spoke to say they want change. They feel like the last 4 years we've gone down a road that they don't like, many of the voters I speak to, and they're looking for something different. And if this can aid in getting that something different that they're looking for, then they're all for it. And I think that's why we saw such high numbers in terms of early voting, and I think that's why we saw such interest yesterday on Election Day. Bear in mind, Pat, that we're talking about 4.4 million people who voted in this runoff election here in Georgia, and that is more than the number of people in Georgia who voted in the 2016 general election.
Eric, I want to ask you another question. The president dumped pretty heavily on the Republican governor and the Secretary of State of Georgia. Did his comments have any impact in limiting the number of evangelicals or other voters who may have showed up?
I'd have to say the answer to that is yes, and that had been the major fear for those among evangelicals, among conservatives, and those who are in Republican ranks, that the president was really doing more harm than good with his constant drumbeat about alleged fraud, with his constant drumbeat among those who are in Republican leadership here in the state of Georgia, the Secretary of State and the governor, as well as the lieutenant governor. All of those things sort of casting a shadow of doubt over this runoff election and possibly dissuading some voters, some Republican voters, from even going to the polls. I think that you're going to find in the days and weeks to come that many are going to equate a loss here in Georgia, if in fact that's what is certified, a loss for Republicans. They're going to equate that with many of the statements that President Trump himself has made.
Eric, thank you so much for your